Welcome back to Finding Freedom, everybody. It's a ministry of Better Equipped, and it's specifically designed. Finding Freedom is specific to helping people overcome and find freedom and light from sexual addiction, pornography addiction. And today's episode, I'm so excited. I know Garrett's excited for us to bring this to you because it's like a two-part series where we've reached out into the interweb and spaces and asked some people two questions, okay? And the questions are this: what do you wish someone had told you before you ever looked at porn for the first time? That's today's episode. The next episode is: what do you wish someone had told you after you looked at porn for the first time, okay? And so we're going to be diving into this. Garrett Murphy, my co-host here, why this is really your brainchild, and I love it. What spurred this on in your mind?
Well, as we've mentioned in previous episodes, we wish someone, I wish someone, and I've talked to a lot of guys, they wish somebody had talked to them. Somebody had talked to them at all about it. And I just know, as a parent of three children, 12 and under, 4, 10, and 12 right now, like it's a heavy thing knowing that it's sexuality, everything is sexualized and it's coming at them right and left, and pornography is everywhere and it is abundant, and it's on their, it's on every device that has Wi-Fi access, and all their friends have multiple devices. And it's a scary thing for parents. It's a scary, and so what I really had in mind for this, I'm interested in hearing like, oh, what do you wish somebody had told you from the perspective of someone who has struggled with pornography. I'm really interested in that. But what I really hope that this podcast can do is really encourage conversation between parents and their children, or between churches, leaders, youth leaders, and the youth that they're helping to shepherd. And so I really just hope that this can just spark some ideas of conversation, so that those conversations take place. Because for the people that we reached out to, they didn't take place. For most people, they never had a conversation about pornography or sexuality, period. So my hope behind this, my prayer for this podcast, is that parents will listen to this. They'll take some ideas and some inspiration from this about and understand the need to talk to your kids, because everybody that we reached out to does wish somebody had talked to them. We're going to go over those responses of what people wish somebody had said to them. And so parents, it's your job. Like, don't think that the church, that the pastor is going to go talk to every child that comes through. I mean, not that we even want that, or like, but it's like somebody else will do it. No, it's your job, parents. So go talk to your kids. And so here are some responses. We're going to talk about some responses today that we got from people when we asked them the question: what do you wish somebody had told you or talked to you about before you looked at porn for the first time? That's on our episode today. And take notes. Like, if you're not talking to your kids about it already, then start forming multiple. One of my big points here is multiple conversations. This isn't a one and done. We'll talk about it once and be done with it. This is a consistent conversation, and it builds this comfort level that you have. It builds a trust level. It takes away from this like awkward factor that I believe most of our parents didn't have that conversation. One, because they weren't listening to podcasts saying like, you need to have this conversation. Right. But there's just this awkward, like, if we say too much, then we'll actually just spark their curiosity. I think that's certainly a real concern. When is the right age? And we're going to talk about some of that today and in future episodes to have these conversations. But I think just my hope for this is that parents listen to this and they're filled with boldness and own their role in their child's life for the battle that they're in or they're going to be in with what the world is throwing at them, and what part of God's design. I mean, it's God's design for us to have this desire to replenish the earth in the beginning, and to continue. It's so. How do you navigate that conversation, right? Like, So I hope we keep it will stay PG for sure. And so you could listen to this with your kids. I hope that you can if they're of age. And if they're not, save it on your list, your watch later list or whatever, and watch it with them later. So
tattoo the link on your arm, and you won't miss it then.
Make sure you make sure you like and subscribe for life, and just watch it later.
That's right. All right, let's jump right into our first response from Mike Likes Freedom. He was 16 when he first was exposed to pornography. But before that, he said, before I ever looked at porn, I wish that someone would have told me how hard it would be to stop once you start, and how much it will negatively impact you internally, even if it feels harmless initially. So that's what Mike Likes Freedom has to say about that. Garrett, any thoughts on that one?
Well, I reviewed some of the ones that were sent to me, some of the responses, and just get used to it. All the responses are how addicting and how hard it is to stop, and how the negative impact. So like people word it in different ways, but I wish the same thing,
It's like a warning of love and you can hear the despair and like, man, like save yourself, kind of like that tone with a lot of these.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the words he used in that response was the impact, the negative impact internally. And that's where you really need to have more than one conversation and a longer conversation, because, with drugs or alcohol, it's destroying your body. You might see that you could lose your job, like all these different kind of visible and logical things. And with pornography, it's such an internal, the negative impact is just, it's an internal thing. It's in your heart. It's in your soul. Like, it's really hard to understand as a 10-year-old or 16-year-old or whatever, that internal struggle is such a real thing that you can have your entire life and really not see direct earthly consequences that the rest of the world can't necessarily see, but you see them, you feel them, you live in them.
Oh yeah.
And they shape the way the rest of your life goes. So.
Right. Yeah. Gary, you want to read that one guy who was 8 years old when he was exposed to pornography?
Yes. So that one guy was 8 when he was exposed, and he said, before I ever looked at porn, I wish someone would have told me, don't. It will rob you of everything. It will steal your time, your happiness, your joy, your intimacy, your innocence, your mental health, your relationships, and so much more. It will promise you the world and at the same time crush you with the weight of it. It will promise you relationship, but yet leave you in isolation. It will promise you an escape from reality, but it will leave you trapped. It will promise you a dream, but you will be living a nightmare that will play over and over again. It will promise you love, but you will only end up hating yourself. It's evil. If it breaks God's heart, how will it ever truly satisfy ours?
Ooh, man, what a response. What a response. Yeah. Man, he's just saying this is a lie. Like he wished somebody would have told him it's a lie. It's a facade. It's not true. Like the promises that porn or even just the enemy, Satan, says that it has to offer, it's actually the exact opposite. And I love how he words this. He wishes somebody would have showed him the contrast of here's what you might hear your friends talk about it. You might hear the world talk about it. You might hear, even inside of you craving or thinking or wondering, but here's the reality of what it will do to you. I love that wording there.
Yeah. Well, I want to, seeing it here, we received all these in written response. I believe some of these would have been dramatically. I think that one guy would have said this in a very passionate way. And he writes, I wish they would have told me, all caps with the exclamation point, don't. Like They would have yelled like, don't, like, I love you, I care for you, don't. And to hear these words, it will promise you a relationship and it'll leave you in isolation. It will promise you escape from reality, but it will actually leave you trapped. Like, he was 8. This guy was 8. So like you're saying all this to an 8-year-old. And again, I want to emphasize a continuous conversation, a dialogue that's ongoing, because this is there's a ton of stuff in this. So like that one guy wishes he had all this not thrown at him at once, but probably ongoing conversation to explain, well, how it'll promise you this dream. What do you mean? As an 8-year-old, how do you understand that? So again, I think this is right. It's really powerful. Like, just reading it is really powerful because it's so true. Promises you love, but it'll only end up hating yourself. Like, that is there's so much truth to that. And it says it's evil. If it breaks God's heart, how will it ever truly satisfy ours? Like, there's so much to that. And these are the conversations that we should be having with our kids. So it's not a one and done. It's not just send these quotes. This is just what they sent us in their little concise written responses. We need to get this guy on as a guest on our podcast.
Oh yeah.
Go into that.
Hey, that one guy, if you're listening, reach out. Let us know if you're willing to be on the podcast. We'd love to have you. Yeah, I agree, man. I just, you can hear this just worded so well. You can just hear that desperation and the urgency to have the desire to have these conversations. Like you said, over time. I think about my 5-year-old son. Okay, I've got 3 daughters. I've also and we talk with them too. But my 5-year-old son, it's like, in the age appropriate ways, like, he doesn't even realize how much we've already had these conversations in certain ways. It will increase year by year in terms of how explicit that will be in the conversation, what it'll look like. But I don't want him to get to 8, 9, 10, 11. And again, a lot of people never have this conversation. That's the whole point of this, is a lot of people clearly have never had this. They wish someone would have had this conversation with them. But I'm so serious about it that I'm not waiting till 8, 9, 10, 11 to even begin the normalcy of bringing this type of stuff up. And I could give you one quick example. Is he was looking at a Marvel book that he got from the library, and it was all drawings, like artwork of these Marvel characters. But it was clear in this book that they were accentuating the females in certain ways. Nothing that we would consider pornographic, but definitely like trying to make it very enticing. And I said something to him. I said, what do how do you feel when you see those that picture? And I can't quote exactly, but he basically was like, I like it. And I was like, yeah, we've got to be careful with our eyes. We've got to be careful what we look at, and we like, it just these conversations of like identifying and acknowledging to him, like, I get it. I see it. I see, I'm trying to think through this 5-year-old's lens of these like drawings. And I'm like, we've got to be really careful what we let our eyes say. I said more than that, but let's go to, I'm going to read Noah's Snark, who was 11 years old when he was first exposed to pornography. And he says this: before I ever looked at porn, I wish someone would have told me that. And he gives us an awesome list here. He says, it's never okay. He wished somebody would have told him this. It's never okay. Not once in a while or infrequently, 0 exceptions. Okay. I'm going to keep reading, but I love how he's pointing out that it's not something, well, I dabble in it, because the reality is people don't dabble in this. That's not the way it really ends up. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to take a peek, or once in a while. It's like, this becomes very consuming. I think that's a big piece of what he's getting at. It's never okay, not once in a while or infrequently, 0 exceptions. It teaches you to objectify human beings. If you are married, it will damage intimacy as well as cheapen and devalue your spouse and their uniqueness. If you are married, it can bring up insecurities in the bedroom. It will. I'm sure that all the ED stuff out there, a lot of it is driven by people's massive damage they've done from pornography and the desensitization and things like that. I don't have scientific proof on that, but it's like the obvious thing. It's like the elephant in the room that nobody's talking about. But bring up all these insecurities in the bedroom. It will encourage you. Porn will encourage you to lie and keep secrets. It will damage your heart, mind, and soul. The dopamine and oxytocin rush can become an insatiable drug, and without supernatural intervention through God, it is impossible to quit on your own. Man, again, wow. Yeah. A lot there. What are you feeling? What are you thinking when you hear that, Garrett?
I think that's well thought out, and I think I love the way he starts. It's and this is debated. So I got online and asked, like, what's the average age? Like, looking for more reports, because sometimes everything's so outdated. Yeah. It's like, and COVID and the advances in technology have changed the date most people are exposed, for sure. Like most boys and girls, which I did find the average age for boys is usually around age 10, and for girls it's 11 or 12, right? Like, according to Common Sense Media and some different surveys that are out there right now. But anyway, I saw these articles that were like, should I let my kid watch porn? So because like they're acknowledging this human need and desire and the physical need to have release. And I clicked on it and read some of these responses, and it was so sad because the parents were like, you can't hide from it. You can't hide them from it. It's everywhere. Like, it was like 80% of them were just absolutely hopeless of, if you do that, it'll only make them, encourage them to go look more. If you hide them from it, they'll want it even more. It'll make it even worse, 10 times worse. Like, those were is that how they treat drugs? Is that how they treat cocaine? Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm with Noah's snark here. It's never okay. Not once, not for a while, zero exceptions, because it's so dangerous, right? Like, it's so dangerous because, as everyone admits, it's so addictive. I had no idea I could get hooked so quickly and so strongly. Like, it's so dangerous. And that's one reason it's never okay, because it's like very few people because it's in its abundance. Right. It's everywhere. And it does, I don't know. Yeah. I'm with you here. That's kind of what sticks out to me is like, I wish I had seen more of that in reading those articles or those forums that I was reading. I wish I had seen more of this. Because I completely agree. It's one of those, not even a hint of sexual immorality is what God desires for us. And it's the healthiest thing for us. Right. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Noah Snark, I'm loving these handle names. The next one is Harry. I think it's from Home Alone. I think this is a Home Alone reference from Marv and Harry.
There we go.
Harry. All right. So, Garrett, what's Harry say?
He says, before I ever looked at porn for the first time, I wish someone would have told me how it taints your view of what love and sex can be. I wish they would have told me how addictive and controlling it could be.
Yeah, he was 16 when he was first exposed to pornography. And man, he just, it's so easy to be like, a lot of people go in innocently, naively, not understanding how much this is about to change their life. I think this is a great example of just like, I was ill-equipped. Nobody told me just how addictive and controlling this could be, how it could change my entire view of love and sex, like just by looking at something. Like, you think something that seemingly sounds so innocuous, but like it's just like the reality versus the perception or the way it's being painted in culture. Big difference there. Any thoughts there on Harry?
No, just once again, just a warning how addictive and controlling it could be. Like, we see that in pretty much everybody's response here. So,
yeah. All right. Facing the Sun said his answer that he wished somebody would have told him before he looked at porn was, He says, it's hard to answer this question about what I wish someone would have told me before I ever looked at porn for the first time, because I wasn't a Christian, so I really delighted in sin. I suppose I wish someone would have just shared about the goodness and richness of the gospel. There is nothing better for a dead sinner or a struggling saint than a good dose of the lavish grace of God. Oh, all right. We've got Facing the Sun here, who was not a believer until later in his journey. And he's like, I lavished in sin, but I needed the gospel. I needed someone to help share the goodness and richness of the gospel, and then to share the lavish grace of God with me. Like, that was radical. That would have been radical for him, man. How does that hit your ears?
I mean, it's powerful. We can focus. We can be intently focused on this and how to run from it, how to get rid of it, how to flee from it, and man, let's not forget the power of the gospel. I've talked to many men, heard many stories, many testimonies of, this is just how I lived. This was, sexual immorality. That was part of life until I heard the gospel. And then I realized, hey, this is wrong. This isn't within God's design. And it's actually really hurting me. And it's much heavier, when you realize the weight of your sin. So I thank you so much for this response, because there's a world of people out there that this is what they need to hear, not don't look at porn. That's what they need to hear. So
yeah, I love it. All right. We've got Ipkiss, who was 9 years old when he was first exposed to porn. Garrett, you want to read Ipkiss?
Yes. He said, I think my view of sexuality in porn was modeled after the 90s comedy movies view. Somewhere between Something About Mary and American Pie. It's no big deal. Every guy does it. It's actually a good thing because it will help reduce bigger temptations. I wish someone would have told me that it's a lie. It's all a lie. That's what he says. It kills your spirit one click at a time.
Man. Yeah.
So I remember that. Yeah. Right? We grew up in that era of American Pie and Something About Mary, and it's all a joke. They normalized, desensitized, made it appealing and funny for teenagers and
right. So, like, one thing I want to mention about this specific response from Ipkiss is just to parents listening. Really, even if you ever think you might be a parent someday, or you are a parent, is either you're gonna educate, they call it sex education. Either you're gonna do that, or the world's gonna do that. It's gonna happen. So you don't get to choose if they ever get it. It's going to happen through American Pie or something like that, or it's gonna come in healthy ways through you. I always say they're either gonna get educated on the school bus or at school in the locker room, or they're gonna find it in safe spaces that are filled with truth and grace and love at home. And this is a great example of that mindset of, and we don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. But then it's being talked about everywhere by the world and friends and movies and music. It's everywhere. So how are your kids gonna know what to believe, what to think, how to view these things if they aren't hearing it from you? And so it's really, really important. All right. Short King 20, who was 11 years old when he was first exposed to pornography, says this about what he wished someone would have told him. He says, I wish someone would have told me all the negative consequences it would bring: anxiety, self-doubt, guilt, and an unhealthy view of women and sex. I wish someone would have told me that it was like other drugs. I wish someone told me that it was like other drugs and harmful substances that are highly addictive and difficult to stop. What's your thoughts there on Short King 20, Garrett?
Yeah, my personal response is along these lines, like back to the very first response, the negative impact internally, that anxiety, self-doubt, guilt. certainly the unhealthy view of women and sex, but those internal struggles of guilt and self-doubt, and going back to the response prior to this, it kills your spirit one click at a time. And part of that is because like you go into this, that guilt pushes you further into the dark. You just want to hide. You want to compartmentalize. You want to like not let people know that there's this part of you that you don't like, or that self-hate that some people are referencing here too. Like, so it certainly resonates with me, because that's the internal impact, negative impact consequence that this has. And for most of these guys, it stayed hidden for years or decades. It was just a part of their life that was never talked about with anyone. Yeah. And that is a heavy, heavy thing. So
yeah. I want to bring up the point that Short King 20 said about comparing it to chemical substances, drugs, and other harmful substances. I've thought about this a lot. I continue to think about it. And just speaking for me, I know this isn't everybody's story. Okay. So just personalizing it, I've never been tempted by substances, and I've always associated them with really direct negative life impacts. It's interesting, I mean, like even DARE, like the drug prevention stuff in schools, is there early on in elementary. And it's interesting. I know like some of it, but like why we're getting more and more stats every year of the damaging effects of this, but why we don't treat pornography or think about it in the same way, where we think of it as like, of course I would never, do cocaine or do, like I don't want to ruin my life. Like that's not the way that most people view pornography. There is this like dabbling, indulging. It's not that big a deal. Like, I don't know. It's interesting. If you're out there listening, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the comparison. I'm not saying everything about it's identical, because there's like the physical degradation and like the way it controls your life, but like it's not as different as we like to make it from the more people I've talked to and my own experiences is. I'd love to get your thoughts on that if you're listening. So comment below, reach out at betterequippedwithcody@gmail.com or FindingFreedomAndLight@gmail.com, and let us know your thoughts on that topic. So, all right, Garrett, you got a golf nut who was 9 years old when he was first exposed to pornography. What's his thoughts?
Yes, he said, I wish someone had told me that it's fake, that no matter how real it looks, it's either digitally enhanced or being forced on someone. Also, that it will always leave me feeling more empty than I may have felt before.
Yeah. It's fake. It's not real. Porn is it's a produced, how do you say this? It's acting. It's not reality. And it's movie magic at its best and worst all at the same time, like CGI or not, and AI is becoming a thing, which is making it even more fake. Like the things that's going to do in time, and not to get too grotesque here or too inappropriate, but like it's going to alter things, it's going to change things. It's already doing that in certain ways, from what I understand, with just imposing people's faces and stuff. But like, this is a real thing, but it's just fake.
Yeah, it is. If you are exposed to this and use this from age, these developmental years of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, like you think that life and a relationship with a woman is about, hey, this is what I want and you're going to do it. Or, like that they're just there at your beck and call to do whatever you please. And
they're going to want to, like, in porn, and they're more
that they will
aggressive, and that they
oh, of course. Yeah. And then of course the way that it's so scary having a daughter. Like it's so scary that her peers currently are very likely already frequently viewing hardcore pornography, and it's so that's a heavy thing from like a place of fear. Like, what do you do about them? What do you do about that? Like, I know conversations that we have or should have, will continue to have with our daughter, but it's like, we're praying that the Lord and parents are protecting these young men from being exposed and developing with this view of what women are like and are for, and not being objectified and being instead but being honored, and that's what sex is like. It's so fake, and and it's sad. It's just so sad that that's being exposed to at that age. They can't help but not think that that's what a relationship between a man and a woman is all about. So so we got 2 more responses. We got No Residue saying, I wish that someone I respected had told me that however enticing what I see might be, it could never get anywhere close to what God intended for me and what he has in store through an intimate, loving relationship. That's so true. Thank you, No Residue, for that. Love the handle you got going on there. Man, it's God has so much better in store for us than the fake stuff that we just talked about. It's never going to come close. It's always going to be a mirage in the desert, that's never going to be able to satisfy. There's a significant difference between a trusting relationship and marriage that is safe and shared exclusively between you than just the fake. Not only is it fake, but then the many varieties and ways and of fakeness that is going to be just bombarding your mind and your views and warping it. It's going to be changing that and really stealing the beautiful intimacy that he wants for you, that he's given you as a gift. Garrett, any thoughts on No Residue's comment there? Yeah, I don't know exactly how No Residue meant this, but when I read that, and I read that last sentence of what God intended for me and what he has in store through an intimate, loving relationship, I don't think about the marriage first. I think about how impossible, like when you're indulging in these things behind the back of your wife, like it's really hard to feel like you have an intimate relationship, an intimate, loving, honest, authentic relationship, because you're hiding. Right. Like there's something she should know, needs to know. It's not an honoring thing to her. And but what I think about is my relationship with God, how impossible it felt to get close and to have that intimate and loving and authentic relationship, not because sin separates us. Like, and we get into this on other podcasts, but it's like knowing I keep returning to this, and that it's a part of my life. And though I ask for forgiveness and Christ's blood is enough to forgive, that it feels there's so much guilt, and all the emotions that we talked about in these responses today. But he has something beautiful between our relationship with him. And I've experienced that in the freedom I've walked now. And I knew there was more than what I had when I was partaking in viewing the pornography. And it was absolutely true. There's far more. Like you can, so anyway, that's what I think of when I think about this. It's not just about marriage. It's about our intimate and loving relationship with God.
Absolutely. What a lot of people are craving is, even if it's not initially, very soon, is they're looking for that intimacy, and it actually, looking at porn brings you further from the intimacy with the Lord and your relationships in general, but especially as you enter into a loving marriage relationship. It's like you said, it's like Noah Snark said, it causes you to lie and live in that lie and hide. And it's not just the sexual immorality all by itself. It's also the other things that it creates in your life. So Garrett, finish us out with no slips, no falls. What's he got
All
to
right.
say?
He says, I wish someone had told me just how addicting porn would be and how it would damage me spiritually. I also wish that I had been told of the adverse effects it would have on my relationships, especially my marriage. So very similar to what we just read and talked about.
Yeah, and if you've been listening, thank you for listening this far. Like you're hearing these themes. So if you're taking this, you're listening to this. We're seeing some really common themes. As man, I wish someone would have said these things to me. I wish someone would have told me the truth.
Yeah,
and that isn't that novel. Like I wish someone had told me the truth.
Yeah,
it's shape my view before I ever get exposed to it.
Yeah, and that's what that's where the idea, the inspiration for this topic came from. It's like, what could someone have said? I have kids. What can I say right now as a parent? And I spent quite a bit of time thinking about this. And while I felt like there's no way, if we're going to read other responses, I can talk about everything I thought of. Sure. But just some of the bullet points were, first of all, the conversation. So parents, this conversation needs to be had in love. Okay, not through through condemnation, not through accusation, not even through fear, right? Like there's a level of fear that we can't necessarily. So do it in faith and in prayer and do it in love. Like you have to be in tune with how would Jesus talk to someone who is struggling or might potentially in the future? How would that conversation happen? And so this is going to be something that needs to be done with patience and approachability. And so it has to be done in love. That has to be a real and authentic thing. And so, but I thought if somebody wanted to reach me as a 10-year-old, that was my first exposure to pornography. Now I'd been abused as a very young child or toddler, which changed things in my development and whatever. But when I was 10, I was very aware of what was happening when I was exposed to this. And I wish somebody in love had acknowledged how strong the curiosity was. There's this curiosity to see a woman's body, to understand what is this when all these videos, people are kissing and they go into a bedroom and it cuts away, what happens then, those different things. But also acknowledge the desires that I have to see this curiosity and the physical things going on in our bodies, at age 10, 11, 12, 13, that we have a physical desire. We have a desire in every way to experience that. So I wish there had just been the acknowledgement of that, and then talk to me about the dangers of pornography. And we've talked about many of them today, and there are so many different ones. But literally, I was going to bring up the whole. I remember, was it McGruff, the data dog? I remember that dog. It's kids say no to drugs or what, I don't know what he did, but it's I remember that. And it's I remember my parents, don't do drugs. That's absurd. That's crazy. It'll destroy your life. It could kill you. There were always all these warnings about drugs and alcohol, different things that can mess you up and you'll have consequences and they're just so dangerous. I listened to those warnings. And it's exactly what you said, Cody. That's what one of my points was. It's so dangerous. Don't even start. Not even once, not even every once in a while. Don't do it. It's just too dangerous. Do not do it. And that's where I wish somebody would have started with just this really stern, loving warning after acknowledging the real curiosity and desire. There are other ways, there are other things, but do not do this. And then to have more ongoing conversations about the impacts of whether it's that it's fake, whether it's that this is a conversation I'm going to be having with my kids very soon. This has been really good for me to go through this process of what do I wish someone would say? What should I be saying? Because I'm going to talk to them how do you feel when you lie to us? I'm going to ask my kids that, because I remember what it was like as a kid. I've never wanted to lie. I've never liked to lie except about this. Because I felt like I had to lie. And carrying that lie around was so heavy. Hiding this in the dark has been so heavy for me. First, in my childhood from my parents, I felt like I was a rotten, bad kid, and I couldn't talk to them about it because then I'd just be, written off. Like and then in marriage, hiding this, like I hated it. I absolutely hated it. If somebody said, "How do you feel when you lie?" I don't like it. Well, if you start looking at pornography, you're going to have to lie all the time. You're going to feel like you're living a lie. And you'll never be, the longer you do it and the more you do it and the more you can't stop doing it, you're going to feel like you have to hide it even more. You will always have to live a lie. And that is why it hurts your intimate, loving relationship with your future spouse and your intimate, loving relationship with God.
Right.
And then of course I'd go over scripture. And, the first one I think of is 1 Corinthians 6:18, where it says, flee from sexual immorality. So it's not like, because sometimes, and we'll have podcasts about this too, about battle versus run, because he says, flee sexual immorality, right? And, I think about David on the roof, run, get off that roof right now, like run, go somewhere. And, it's one of those things because it's so dangerous. If you see a bear, a lion, it's like run. I know there are certain animals I guess you're not supposed to run to, you just be still or whatever, or run from. But to just run from it, because we're told, the Bible gives this example of this is a narrow path. You can go down these other paths. This is the wide path. This is the wrong path. Run, because it's going to take you the wrong direction and it is going to lead to destruction. It is going to do that. So then, of course, in these ongoing conversations, I talk, and we will have more podcasts about this. Access, like how do we not give our kids unlimited or access to these
unrestricted
devices,
access?
Devices, what ages, monitoring software, filtering software, those different types of things. But I just think if they had started, had the one conversation, this is how it's been with my kids. You had that one awkward conversation. It just opens the door to more conversations. Like you broke through that wall, you had it, everybody survived. The conversations I've had, my kids really actually appreciated it. I felt like they felt more mature because I was willing to talk to them about these things. Right. But as a 10-year-old, if somebody had sat me down and said, it is so dangerous, you're going to want to, and you're going to like it. Like if you do it, you'll actually love it. But listen to these consequences. So it's dangerous. Just like with drugs and alcohol, you might really enjoy it while you're doing it. You might have a great time at that party. You might it's going to make you feel really good, make you feel different. Nothing else can do like that. But listen to this. And I wish somebody in my lifetime ever had just shared a testimony with me of this is what happened to me. Yeah. Like, that guys struggled with this, that we grew up with, whether youth leaders, guys. Why wouldn't somebody share that with us? And I'm mad because I'm like,
well, I fear that a lot of them would never found freedom. I'm not the judge.
I agree.
Part of me is like, maybe they were just as stuck as a lot of guys.
I don't know. You, but still, warn us from your place of stuckness about how miserable you are currently. Do that. But again, they fear they'll be exposed if that's where they are. It just keeps keeps it in the dark. And I hope my hope for this podcast is that parents hear this and they realize I need to shine light in potential dark places of my child's life. I don't want them hiding this thing that will have such internal negative impact on them, but also shape the way that they view sex and women and marriage, and certainly shape their relationship with the Lord. How could it not? So speaking from my experience and with every one of these guys that I got a response from, I've talked to many of them so many times, it has such a negative impact on the potential for a relationship with the Lord. Pretty much just stagnant. It just it's limited to a certain place. And it's so sad. Do you want that for your kids? I know you don't. So have these conversations so that door's open for the help that they need when they need it, but you've also educated them on the dangers of pornography usage. of viewing the pornography that they're curious about, that they want, that will feel good. Like, acknowledge that that's a real thing, but also have studies about like how God created us and why he created us that way, but for the beauty of his design. You know, like have these conversations of what if our culture, the world didn't, and they're starting to try to get away from it in the United States, but like, it's not about a monogamous relationship with the opposite gender. Like, you get one husband, one wife. Like, that's how it works. You can just have sex with anybody you want, anytime, anywhere. Just do whatever you want. Like, that is such a chaotic, like, family. There's no such thing as a family unit anymore, and kids will not develop in the ways that they'll be missing so many different things. There's not stability there. Our cultures would fall apart. Like, our society would fall apart. And to have those conversations so that kids understand God's design is the best way. We're not animals. We are human beings that he created in his image and gave us a special plan and design to save us from our sin. And a healthy way to do that is through a man marrying a woman and having a healthy, real relationship, right? Without lying and without hiding. And so just to have those conversations opens up the book, or opens up more conversations to just like really great things in your kid's life that you want to talk about before they're 20 years old and, you know,
I
16.
I agree. I mean, listen, if you're listening, I'd love to hear, what do you wish someone would have told you before you ever looked at porn? And, you know, reach out to us at FindingFreedomAndLight@gmail.com. You can always learn more at betterequip.net/freedom, and reach out to us if there's ways that we can encourage you, help you, if you want discipled and coached in this area at a personal level, or if you just, you know, need more encouragement. Share these resources out with others. Again, I hope you'll join us for part 2, where we say what I wish someone would have told me after I looked at porn. Because there's a shift. We'll talk about that. There's a shift in our mind when suddenly there's the shame and guilt that we're up against, or the exposure and the hook that grabs us, and the curiosity starts to kill the cat. And what do we do with that? Because that's also where maybe you're at. And we get to talk about that. So we're excited to share those responses from others and share our thoughts on that. We're so grateful for you. We're praying for you. We love you with the love of Jesus. We want hope and freedom and light in your life. And we want to be testaments that God is able, through his power, if we are willing to really surrender to him and live a life of honesty, confession, prayer with other people that he calls us to. He has freedom for us that is promised. His promises are true, but we have to live into that. So we hope that you'll join us again for the next episode, and we'll see you soon.